The metal walls of Kepler Station screamed as enemy fire pounded against them. Officer Jin's hands shook as he worked on the radio equipment, trying to fix the broken parts, while sparks shot out from the damaged machines around him. The loud, warning sirens never stopped ringing through the hallways. "Nobody's answering our calls for help," Jin told his boss, Commander Park. His voice was scared, but he tried to sound brave. Outside their windows, 23 red enemy warships floated, in space like hungry wolves surrounding a wounded deer. Park stared at the computer screen showing all the enemy ships. His face looked tired and worried. They only had one small defense system to protect their mining station. "Keep trying to call for help on every radio channel," he told Jin. "Someone out there has to hear us." Down in the living areas of the station, Engineer Hana was helping scared families hide in the strongest rooms they had. Little kids were crying while their mums and dads tried to calm them down, even though the adults were just as frightened. Everyone knew the Vrakari were cruel enemies who never let anyone live after they attacked. The whole station shook again when more enemy weapons hit their protective shields. The lights flickered on and off. Some people screamed. The shields were getting weaker with every attack. Hana ran through the hallways, checking on families and making sure the heavy metal doors were locked tight. She saw an old man holding his granddaughter, both of them shaking with fear. "Don't worry," she told them, but her own voice wasn't steady. "The shields will hold." But everyone could hear the metal walls bending and cracking. The enemy ships kept firing their bright plasma weapons. Each hit made the station shake like it might fall apart. Jin kept trying different radio frequencies, hoping someone would answer. His equipment was old and barely working. Sweat dripped down his face as he twisted dials and pressed buttons. Come on," he whispered to himself. Commander Park walked around the control room watching his small team work. They were miners and engineers, not soldiers. Most had never seen real fighting before, but they all stayed at their posts, doing their jobs even though they were terrified. The tactical screen showed the enemy ships moving closer. Their red hulls gleamed like blood in the starlight. Some were as big as buildings, covered in weapons that could destroy the station in seconds. "Sir," called out Officer Kim from his sensor station. "The shields are down to 30% power, maybe less." Park nodded grimly. They all knew what that meant. Soon the shields would fail completely. Then the enemy would board their station. After that, nobody would survive. The children's cries echoed through the corridors as their parents held them close. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Where was the help they had called for? Why wasn't anyone coming to save them? The station shuddered again, harder this time. A section of wall cracked and emergency foam sprayed out to seal it. Time was running out for everyone aboard Kepler Station. 3 long hours had crawled by since Jin first sent out their cry for help. The radio equipment kept making crackling sounds, but only empty silence came back from the darkness of space. Jin's hands wouldn't stop shaking as he listened to one dead frequency after another. "I finally got through to Coalition Command," Officer Lee said, but his voice sounded empty and hopeless. "All their ships are fighting in the Epsilon sector. The closest help is 16 hours away." Commander Park felt his heart sink. He closed his eyes for just a moment, trying to stay strong for his crew. 16 hours until rescue, but their shields would fail in 2 hours, maybe less. It was like waiting for a doctor when you were already bleeding to death. Down in the machine rooms, Engineer Hana was fighting a losing battle against time. She crawled through narrow spaces between broken pipes and sparking wires, trying to give their shields more power. Her face was covered in black soot, and burns marked her arms from where hot metal had touched her skin. "Come on, you old piece of junk," she muttered to the ancient power systems. These machines were older than she was, built when the station first opened 20 years ago. They were never meant to handle this kind of damage. The tools in her hands grew hot as she worked. Every few seconds, bright sparks would light up the dark maintenance tunnels. She could hear the enemy weapons hitting their shields above, each blast making the whole station shake. Back in the control room, Jin kept switching between radio channels, hoping to hear a friendly voice, but every frequency was either silent or filled with the static of space. His shirt was soaked with sweat, and his fingers kept slipping on the controls. "Please, someone answer," he whispered into his microphone. "This is Kepler Station. We need help." Anyone out there, please respond. Officer Lee suddenly looked up from his screens, his face pale. Sir, I'm seeing movement from the enemy fleet. They're launching something. Through the big windows of the control room, everyone could see small metal objects breaking away from the red enemy ships. They looked like seeds falling from a dead tree, but these seeds were full of enemy soldiers. Boarding pods, Park said quietly. Everyone in the room knew what that meant. The enemy was done playing games. They were coming. He aboard to finish the job personally. The small attack pods moved fast through space, their engines glowing bright blue. There were dozens of them, each one carrying enemy troops with weapons and armor. They would attach to the station's hull and cut their way inside. Hana's voice came through the radio from the engine room. I'm giving you everything I can, but it's not enough. The shields are failing faster than I can fix them. Jin counted the approaching pods on his screen. 43 boarding pods incoming. They'll reach us in 6 minutes. The families hiding in the shelters could hear the adults, talking in worried voices. Even the children seemed to sense that something terrible was about to happen. The crying had stopped, replaced by a scary quiet. Commander Park looked around at his small crew. These were good people, miners, engineers, communications workers. They had never signed up to fight space pirates, but now they would have to, because there was nowhere left to run. The enemy soldiers had broken through the outer walls of Section C. Engineer Hana slammed her hand on the emergency button, sealing the heavy metal doors between sections. But she could hear the terrible screaming sounds the Vrakari made as they moved through the corridors. It wasn't human screaming, it was something much worse, like wild animals hunting for prey. The alien invaders were inside the station now. Their strange battle cries echoed through the metal hallways, promising death to everyone they found. Hana could hear their heavy boots stomping on the floor plates as they searched room by room. I'm sealing off Section C, she reported into her radio, but those doors won't hold them for long. In the control room, everyone was trying to work while the sounds of battle grew closer. Officer Jin kept sending distress calls, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hit the right buttons. Suddenly, sensor operator Kim looked up from his screens with wide eyes. Wait a minute, he called out, his voice cutting through all the noise and panic. I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors. Something really big just appeared out of hyperspace. Commander Park ran over to Kim's station so fast he almost tripped. The numbers on the screen didn't make sense. Whatever was out there was huge, bigger than anything he'd ever seen before, and it was moving straight toward them with a clear purpose. What is it? Park asked, staring at the readings. Kim shook his head, confused. I don't know, sir. The computer can't identify it. The energy signature is completely unknown. Officer Jin looked up from his radio equipment, and for the first time in hours, there was a tiny bit of hope in his voice. Could it be help from the coalition? Maybe they sent someone after all. Kim checked his readings again, then slowly shook his head. Sir, this thing, whatever it is, it's not in any of our databases, and the size of it— He paused, looking scared. It's enormous. Bigger than anything the coalition has. The mysterious ship kept getting closer to their position. On the sensors, it looked like a mountain flying through space. But was it coming to help them, or was it another enemy that would make things even worse? Meanwhile, the Vrakari weapons kept firing at the station. Each blast made the lights flicker and the floor shake under their feet. Smoke was starting to fill the corridors as systems failed one by one. The sounds of the enemy soldiers were getting louder. They had broken through the first set of emergency doors and were working on the second. Soon, they would reach the control room where Park and his crew were trapped. How long until that unknown ship reaches us? Park asked. Kim checked his calculations. About 4 minutes, sir. And how long until the Vrakari break through our defenses? Officer Lee looked up from his tactical display, his face grim. Maybe 3 minutes. It was going to be close. Whatever was coming toward them through the darkness of space, it needed to arrive fast, because in a few minutes there might not be anyone left alive on Kepler Station to save. The station shook again as more enemy fire hit them. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear metal being cut apart as the Vrakari soldiers burned through the emergency doors. The fabric of space itself seemed to rip open like torn cloth as the mystery ship appeared. It was massive beyond belief, but built with smooth, sharp angles that made it look like a deadly work of art. The hull had a strange shine to it, as if the metal was bending light in ways that shouldn't be possible. Everyone on Kepler Station pressed their faces to the windows, staring at this incredible sight. The ship was easily 3 times larger than the biggest Vakari warship, and it moved through space with a grace that seemed almost alive. The Vakari fleet, which had been confidently closing in for the kill, suddenly stopped. Their tight attack formation began to spread apart as the alien commanders tried to figure out what they were facing. For the first time since the battle began, the enemy seemed uncertain. A harsh voice crackled over all the radio frequencies. It was the Vakari admiral, and he sounded angry and confused. "Unknown ship, you will tell us who you are right now, or we will destroy you." The response came immediately, spoken in clear galactic standard that everyone could understand. But the voice that answered made Commander Park's heart nearly stop beating. It was human. A real human voice, calm and strong and completely unafraid. "This is Captain Kang of the Terran Navy," the voice said with quiet authority. "You have 30 seconds to remove all your forces from this star system." Officer Jin dropped his repair tools. Sensor operator Kim stared at his screens in shock. Engineer Hannah stopped working and listened through her radio in amazement. Humans. Real humans were out there, and they had come to help. Most people in the galaxy thought humans had died out years ago. They had disappeared after some great disaster, and many believed they were extinct. But here was proof that they had survived, and they had built ships that made everything else look like toys. The Vakari admiral's laughter sounded like metal being scraped against stone. 30 seconds? Do you know who we are? We are the mighty Vakari Empire. We have conquered 100 worlds. We do not take orders from anyone, especially not from a dead species. But Captain Kang's voice remained perfectly calm, as if she was discussing the weather instead of facing down an entire enemy fleet. 29, she said simply. The countdown had begun. In the control room of Kepler Station, Commander Park found himself holding his breath. The Vakari had stopped their attack on the station, too focused on this new threat to continue shooting. 28, came the human voice again. Officer Lee watched his screens as the massive human ship slowly turned to face the Vakari fleet. Even though it was 1 ship against 23, somehow it didn't look like the humans were outnumbered. It looked like the Vakari were. "Sir," whispered Kim, "I'm reading massive power buildups throughout that human ship. Whatever weapons they have, they're getting ready to use them." The Vakari admiral was still shouting threats over the radio, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "You cannot threaten the Vakari Empire. We will crush you like we crushed all the others." 27, Captain Kang replied, completely ignoring the threats. Commander Park realized he was watching history being made. The humans had returned, and they were not the weak refugees that had fled into the darkness years ago. When Captain Kang's countdown hit 0, hell broke loose in space. The human warship opened fire with weapons that seemed to tear reality apart. Massive metal slugs shot out at speeds so fast they were almost invisible, smashing through Vakari shields like they were made of glass instead of energy. Officer Jin had never seen anything like it. The enemy ships that had terrorized the galaxy for years were being cut apart like paper dolls. Bright beams of energy sliced through their hulls with perfect accuracy, hitting exactly where they needed to cause maximum damage. "This is impossible," Jin whispered, watching his screens in amazement. The most feared fleet in known space was falling apart in front of his eyes. The human ship moved through the battle like it was dancing. Every time a Vakari captain tried to dodge or change direction, the human weapons were already waiting for them. It was as if Captain Kang could see the future and knew exactly where each enemy ship would be. Tactical Officer Lee couldn't believe what he was seeing. How are they doing this? How can 1 ship fight 23 and win? Engineer Hannah was studying the energy readings on her broken equipment. Her eyes grew wide as she read the numbers. "These weapon signatures, I've never seen anything like them. Our computers can't even identify what type of technology this is. The humans have been building things we can't even imagine." The first Vakari ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light that lit up the entire star system. Then another, and another. The human weapons never missed, never wasted a shot. Each blast was placed with the precision of a surgeon's knife, hitting the exact spots that would cause the most damage. The Vakari admiral was screaming orders over the radio, but his ships couldn't respond fast enough. The human attacks came from impossible angles, hitting weak spots that the enemy didn't even know they had. "Look at that," Kim said, pointing at his sensor display. "They're not just shooting randomly. Every shot is calculated to disable or destroy with minimum effort. It's like they studied Vakari ship designs for years." Within just 5 minutes of fighting, half the Vakari fleet was gone. Some ships were completely destroyed, blown apart, into chunks of twisted metal floating in space. Others were drifting powerless, their engines dead and their weapons silent. The human ship never slowed down, never paused to check its damage. It flowed through the battle like water, always moving, always striking. The Vakari ships looked clumsy and slow compared to the graceful way the human vessel fought. "They're not even trying hard," Hana said in wonder. "Look at their power output. They're using maybe half of what their ship can do." Officer Jin watched as another 3 Vakari ships were destroyed in the span of 30 seconds. The enemy formation was completely broken now, with ships trying to flee in all directions. But the human weapons reached out across impossible distances, finding their targets no matter where they ran. Commander Park stood in the middle of his control room, watching legends come to life. The humans hadn't just survived their years in exile. They had become something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The Vakari Empire was learning what it meant to face humanity when they were truly angry. The massive Vakari flagship tried to run away like a scared animal. Its huge engines burned so bright they lit up the darkness of space as the admiral desperately tried to escape the range of the human weapons. But he had made a terrible mistake thinking he could get away. Along the sides of the human warship, dozens of small doors suddenly opened. Out came sleek fighter ships that looked like silver arrows shooting through space. They were small and fast, moving in perfect formation as they chased after the fleeing enemy. The human pilots flew their fighters in ways that seemed impossible. They twisted and turned through enemy fire, dodging plasma blasts that should have killed them instantly. It was like they were playing a deadly game, dancing between the weapons that were trying to destroy them. "Look at them go," Officer Jin said, his voice full of amazement. The human fighters moved so fast his sensors could barely track them. The Vakari ships tried to shoot down the approaching fighters, filling space with deadly energy beams. But the human pilots flew through the attack like they couldn't be touched. Some of their ships got hit and caught fire, but they kept flying anyway. Sensor operator Kim suddenly gasped and pointed at his screen. "I can't believe what I'm seeing. That human pilot's ship is badly damaged, but he's still flying straight at the enemy cruiser." Everyone watched as a human fighter, trailing smoke and sparks, flew directly toward a Vakari warship. The enemy ship shot everything it had at the small fighter, but the pilot never changed course. At the last second, the damaged fighter smashed right into the enemy ship's engine core. The explosion was enormous. The entire Vakari cruiser broke apart, sending chunks of metal flying in all directions. "They're completely insane," Kim whispered, unable to believe what he had just seen. But Commander Park slowly shook his head, and there was respect in his voice when he spoke. "No, Kim, they're not insane. They're human." The old stories came flooding back to Park's mind. When he was a child, his grandfather had told him legends about the humans, stories of warriors who would fight impossible battles and never give up, tales of pilots who would sacrifice everything to protect innocent people. Most adults had said these were just fairy tales, stories made up to entertain children, but the stories were real. Everything his grandfather had told him was true. The human fighters swarmed around the Vakari flagship like angry bees. They flew in patterns that seemed random, but were actually perfectly coordinated. Each pilot knew exactly where the others would be, working together like they shared the same mind. The flagship tried to fight back, but it was surrounded. Human fighters attacked from every direction, hitting weak spots with incredible accuracy. Some pilots flew their damaged ships right into the enemy's weapons, destroying them even as they died. Within minutes, the massive Vakari flagship began to break apart. Small explosions rippled along its hull as the human fighters found their targets. Then, in one final brilliant flash that could be seen across the entire star system, the flagship exploded completely. The shockwave from the explosion shook Kepler Station, but it was a good shake, the shake that meant they were safe. The most powerful fleet in the galaxy had been destroyed by humans who fought like the heroes of legend. The few Vrakari ships that were still alive quickly sent surrender signals on all radio frequencies. Small escape pods shot out from the burning wrecks, carrying the survivors away from the battle. The mighty fleet that had terrorized the galaxy was now nothing but floating wreckage and scared soldiers running for their lives. The massive human warship turned toward Kepler Station, moving, with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Its weapons stopped glowing, but everyone could tell they were still ready to fire at a moment's notice. The ship was like a sleeping giant, peaceful for now, but deadly if awakened. Officer Jin's radio crackled to life with a calm, professional voice. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Kang of the Terran Navy. I'm requesting permission to come aboard your station." Commander Park's hands were shaking so badly he could barely press the communication button. This was history happening right in front of him. "Permission granted, Captain. We would be honored to meet you." "I'll be there within the hour," Captain Kang replied. The hour felt like a lifetime. Everyone on the station was buzzing with excitement and nervousness. The humans were real, and one of them was coming aboard their little mining station. Engineer Hana worked frantically to clean up the damage and make things look presentable, while Officer Jin made sure the docking bay was ready. When Captain Kang finally appeared in their transporter room, she was not what anyone had expected. She was a woman in her 40s, with short dark hair and a face marked by old scars. Her eyes looked like she had seen too many battles and lost too many friends. She wore a simple uniform, but the weapon at her side hummed quietly with some kind of advanced energy. Commander Park stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "Captain Kang, I'm Commander Park. We thought all humans were dead. We thought your species was extinct." Captain Kang's smile was grim, like someone who had learned to find humor in dark places. "That's exactly what we wanted everyone to think. We've been hiding, preparing, building new ships and weapons. We've been waiting for the right time to come back." She walked to the window and looked out at the wreckage of the Vrakari fleet floating in space. Her hand never moved away from her weapon, which made a soft humming sound like it was alive. "The Vrakari made a big mistake today," she continued, her voice getting harder. "They attacked innocent people who couldn't fight back. They hurt families, children, people who never did anything wrong. That's something we humans can't forgive." Park noticed that other crew members were gathering around, listening in amazement to every word. Some were crying with relief, others were staring at Captain Kang like she was a legend come to life. "But how did you survive? Where have you been all these years?" asked Engineer Hana. Captain Kang turned back to them, and her scarred face showed years of pain and determination. "We learned the hard way that sometimes you have to disappear to become stronger. We've spent decades building, planning, waiting. The galaxy forgot about us, and that was our advantage." She gestured toward her massive ship visible through the window. "We're not the weak refugees who fled years ago. We're something new, something the bullies and tyrants of this galaxy aren't prepared to face." The weight of her words settled over everyone in the room. The humans were back, and they had returned as legends made real. Captain Kang looked around at the amazed faces of the station crew and began to tell them a truth that would change everything in the galaxy. What they had just witnessed wasn't just one lucky battle. It was part of something much bigger. Right now, as we speak, dozens of human fleets are attacking Vrakari bases all across known space, she said calmly. "This isn't a rescue mission. This is a coordinated war to end their empire once and for all." Commander Park felt his knees go weak. "Dozens of fleets? You mean there are more ships like yours?" "Many more," Captain Kang nodded. "We've been planning this day for 50 years. Every Vrakari stronghold, every major base, every command center, they're all under attack right now by human forces." The crew gathered around her, hanging on every word. Officer Jin adjusted his radio equipment to try to pick up signals from other parts of the galaxy. Static filled the air, mixed with fragments of panicked enemy communications. "For 5 decades, we lived in exile," Captain Kang continued, her voice growing stronger. We watched from the shadows as the Vrakari conquered world after world. We saw innocent people suffer while the galaxy's governments did nothing, but we weren't just hiding, we were preparing. Engineer Hannah was staring at her scanner readings from the human ship, and her face was pale with shock. "Captain, your technology readings, they're completely off the charts. This is centuries ahead of anything in our databases. How is that possible?" Captain Kang's scarred face showed a bitter smile. "We had the best teachers in the universe. Pain and desperation. When you're fighting for the survival of your entire species, you learn fast. You innovate or you die." She walked over to Hannah's equipment and glanced at the readings. "We spent 50 years studying every alien technology we could find. We learned. From the Altarians, the Centauri, even captured Vrakari equipment. Then we improved on all of it." Officer Jin suddenly looked up from his radio with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm picking up signals from across the galaxy. It sounds like Vrakari fleets are calling for help. They're saying they're under attack everywhere." "That's correct," Captain Kang said with satisfaction. "The Vrakari Empire is collapsing as we speak. Their fleets are scattered, their commanders are panicking, and their conquered worlds are being liberated." The communication system crackled with more intercepted messages. Desperate Vrakari voices were calling for reinforcements that would never come. Some were ordering full retreats. Others were simply screaming in defeat. "We're not the scared refugees who ran away 50 years ago," Captain Kang explained to the amazed crowd. "We're liberators now, and we have the weapons and ships to prove it. The age of Vrakari terror is ending today." Sensor operator Kim was monitoring long-range communications. "Captain, I'm getting reports from the Epsilon sector, the Beta Quadrant, even the Outer Rim territories. Vrakari forces are retreating everywhere. Some are surrendering without a fight." Captain Kang nodded grimly. "The bullies of the galaxy are learning what happens when they push humanity too far. We don't just fight back. We make sure the threat can never rise again." The crew of Kepler Station realized they weren't just witnessing a rescue. They were watching the birth of a new age where humanity had returned as the galaxy's protectors. Within hours of the battle's end, rescue ships began arriving at Kepler Station. But these weren't the usual coalition vessels everyone expected. These were sleek human ships, each one carrying medical supplies, repair equipment, and hope for the future. The grateful colonists watched in amazement as human crews worked alongside them to fix the damage. Children who had been crying in terror just hours before now stared in wonder at their rescuers. The humans were patient and kind, nothing like the fierce warriors they had been in battle. Captain Kang stood with Commander Park on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Her massive warship was preparing to leave, its engines beginning to glow with that strange light that bent space around it. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly, her voice carrying a promise that sent shivers down Park's spine. "What you saw today was just the start. No innocent world will ever have to face bullies alone again." Park nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened. "The galaxy is going to be very different now, isn't it?" "Yes," Captain Kang replied. "The balance of power changed today. The strong can no longer prey on the weak without consequences. We humans are back, and we remember what it feels like to be helpless. We won't let others suffer the way we did, the poor." Human Dreadnought began to move, its massive form turning gracefully toward the edge of the star system. As it reached the jump point, space itself seemed to fold around the ship. Then, in a flash of impossible light, it vanished into hyperspace. But the legend of what happened at Kepler Station began to spread immediately. The crew members who had witnessed the battle told their stories to the rescue workers. The rescue workers told their friends. Soon, word was traveling across the galaxy faster than any ship could fly. Officer Jin sat at his communication station, but this time he wasn't sending out a cry for help. Instead, he was broadcasting a message that would be heard on 1,000 worlds. "This is Kepler Station calling all ships, all colonies, all free people of the galaxy," he said, his voice strong and clear. "The humans have returned. The age of tyrants and bullies is ending. Hope is alive again." The message spread from system to system, carried by traders, diplomats, and travelers. On worlds that had lived in fear of the Vrakari, people gathered around their radios to hear the incredible news. The humans were back, and they were on the side of the innocent. Engineer Hannah was helping to repair the station's damaged systems when she paused to look out at the stars. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness between worlds, more human fleets were waiting. Ships filled with people who had spent 50 years preparing for this moment. The children of Earth were coming home, not as the desperate refugees who had fled long ago, but as the galaxy's new guardians. They had learned from their suffering, grown stronger in exile, and returned with the power to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. On Kepler Station, families hugged their children tighter, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, human ships were watching over them. The nightmare was over, and a new day was beginning. The age of humanity had dawned once again, and this time they would never let the galaxy forget what happens when good people stand together against evil.